Peace, and welcome back to another segment of this year's Black History Month Showcase, Introduction to Nile Valley Civilization. Truth be told, by now, we should be into the second or third segment of cities, but to be honest, I had quite a busy weekend with the children, and needless to say, before I'm a plumber, before my aspirations and endeavors with what I'm doing here, I'm a father first, so we're a little bit backed up, and for that reason, I'm going to dive right into it. So, what you guys have heard me say many times by now, and what you'll continue to hear me say and mention, is the Nile Valley and Nile Valley civilization. Reason being is because that's what I've chosen to highlight for this month's showcase. In my personal opinion, if you're going to be highlighting or showcasing any aspect of Black history, you should be starting at the Nile Valley, which is one of the most profound moments in Black history, or millenniums in Black history. So, before we get into this, I want to lay my groundwork. I want to lay my foundation. Reason being is because I don't want, in the middle of this, for there to be any misconceptions or any weird questions or statements like Egypt's not in Africa, or Mount Sinai is not in Africa, or the Nile Valley's somewhere else, or I don't want to, any of that kind of stuff, or who are the Egyptians or anything like that. So I want to start from the ground, and I want to go through what is the Nile Valley? Where does it travel to? Where does it travel from? And I want to acknowledge who are the original inhabitants of the Nile Valley. Before I do that, though, I want to give reverence, give respect to, and acknowledge one of our late and great ancestors and most notable scholars, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, and I want to quote one of my most favorite quotes from him, and I quote, "History is the clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is the compass that they can use to find themselves on the map of human geography. It is the role of history to tell a people where they have been, where they are, and what they are. But most importantly, it is the role of history to tell a people where they still must go and what they still must be." Dr. John Henrik Clarke. So, on that note, I want to ask my kinfolk and pose a question to my kinfolk around the world. What time is it for us, and in what direction are we headed? Now, what I'm going to do is, for the first time in this showcase, I'm going to shut off the lights, and we're going to get this presentation started so I can start giving some visuals and read some excerpts, and we can get the show on the road. Let's do it. All right, good to go. Ta! Here we go. Behold. This is my personal favorite depiction and picture of the Nile Valley. As you can see, the Nile Valley in Africa, a southern orientation. This depiction is coming right out of Anthony T. Browder's publication, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, picture taken by me and put up by me. So, what this is here is the Nile Valley, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop open this book and read the excerpt on page 45. It's probably going to be most of the page, but I'm just going to elaborate on what we're looking at here. And I quote, "The emergence of civilization in ancient Egypt was nothing more than the outgrowth of culture that developed along the Nile Valley. It is in the Nile Valley where one can find the greatest primary evidence of the earliest beginnings of agriculture, architecture, engineering, language, writing, philosophy, science, and religion. In short, all of the essential components that would lead to the development of a great civilization. The Nile Valley extends over 4,000 miles, from the highlands on the east coast of Central Africa to the delta in the extreme north. In the origins of the mighty waterway which coursed through the Nile Valley have been traced to the twin sources of the Nile River, which are called the Blue Nile and the White Nile. The Blue Nile being something that comes from here, this region, and the White Nile that comes from here, this region, just so we're following along. The Blue Nile begins at Lake Tana, which is located in the mountainous region of northern Ethiopia, near the city of Gondar and the Choki Mountains. This river contains within its flow extremely rich mineral deposits called silt, which played a major role in the physical evolution of the lands in the north and the development of agriculture in Egypt. The Nile Valley and the Nile Delta are among the most fertile farming areas in the world because of the silt which was deposited upon their shores during the annual flood season. An estimated 70% of the Nile's water come from the Blue Nile. The second major tributary to the Nile Valley river system is the White Nile, which has its beginnings in the Great Lake regions of Central Africa along the equator. Approximately half of the water which flows through the White Nile evaporates as it courses through the Sud, a vast swamp in southern Sudan. The primary source of the White Nile is the body of water originally called Nyanza, or lake, by the indigenous population thousands of years ago. Alright, now real quick, I'm just going to hammer off one last paragraph, which is important. For centuries, this area of the equator of Africa has been called the Mountains of the Moon by the inhabitants. As a matter of fact, the language of Kiswahili, Kilimanjaro actually means the mountain of the moon. Alright, the term White Nile describes the raging waters of the southern branch of its mighty river, and the Blue Nile is an appropriate description for the body of water which is noticeably the calmer of the two. Alright, we're going to stop there for time purposes. So real quick to summarize, the White Nile comes from Uganda, comes all the way down and meets the Blue Nile that comes from Ethiopia in this Khartoum, travels up and down Nubia and Kush, and it follows all the way through Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, down to the Mediterranean Sea. Boom. So that's what the Nile Valley is, that's where the water comes from, and that's where it goes. Now we're going to keep jogging right away, and we're going to go into another excerpt out of the same publication. This excerpt comes out of page 48 of the same publication, Introduction to Nile Valley Civilization, and I quote, "In the earliest documents of the ancient Egyptians, their historians often told stories of their southern roots. John G. Jackson, who was acknowledged and remembered as an African scholar king and author of Introduction to African Civilization, cites a historic reference. The Edfu Text is an important source document on the early history of the Nile Valley. This famous inscription found in the Temple of Horus at Edfu gives an account of the origin of Egyptian civilization." That was page 48. Egyptologist Dr. Ben, addressing an audience at a lecture before the Great London Council in England in 1986, states, "In the London Museum, you will find a document called the Papyrus of Juniper," and I quote from the hieratic writing, "We come from the beginning of the Nile, where the land of Hapi dwells, at the foothills of the mountains of the moon. Where is the beginning of the Nile? The furthest point of the beginning of the Nile is in Uganda. This is the White Nile. Bow. This is the White Nile. Boom, here we go. Another point is in Ethiopia, the Blue Nile." Alright, now real quick to the next page. Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, one of our other most notable and famous scholars, is on record stating, my apologies, he is a widely respected educator and Egyptologist as well as historian. Gotta put some respect on the ancestor's name. He is cited saying, "Additional references for the southern origins of the early Egyptians. Their legends tell of their origins in the south, from the sources of the Hapi. This cites at the Edfu Text as the major authority for the legend of southern origin of the pre-dynastic Kemites / Egyptians. The land up south was called Ta-Neter." I want to highlight that part right there. The land up south was called Ta-Neter. Neter being the description and definition for the word God. Okay, also from where the word nature comes from, the land of the god. So Ta-Neter equals land of the god. Now I want to stop right there, and I want to give you some visuals for the Temple of Horus at Edfu, and I want to show you the Juniper Papyrus. I just threw some stuff at you there. So when I speak of the Temple of Horus at Edfu, this is the megalithic structure I'm talking about. Bam. This structure, this temple, this observatory you will find along the banks of the Nile Valley. This is one very famous picture. Obviously I took none of them. Just bring them to you. These are the people at the bottom, and as you can see, the relation to the size. This is another picture. People at the bottom, and you can see the size, the stature, the pillars, and the architecture. This is one more depiction. You can see once again the size and the people and pillars. This is an obelisk to the right, as known by the Greeks, a tekken, as known to the ancient Egyptians or Kemites. And real quick, this is a picture from Google Maps, Temple of Horus at Edfu. You can see right up here where you would find the temple in relation to Cairo, Alexandria, Israel, and the Mediterranean. Alright, now real quick, I mentioned the Papyrus of Juniper. I don't want anything to do with this. Full screen, boom. So this is the papyrus, as mentioned by Dr. Ben in that lecture in London, England, 1989, in regards to another papyrus scroll that also refers to the southern origins of the Egyptians. Now, real quick, I spoke of the land of Ta-Neter, and I want to stop right there, and I want to move forward with another excerpt. But what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to literature from Chiekh Anta Diop, and we are going to reference and pick up right where we left off. Page 76 of African Origin of Civilization. A Frenchman by the name of Émile Amélineau, I'm trying to work with these names, who lived from 1850 to 1915 and who was an archaeologist and Egyptologist, is on record stating the first black race to occupy Egypt went by the name Anu. He shows that they came slowly down the Nile from the south and founded their first cities. Now I'm going to take you to a page where we can read along, and that is page 77, and I'll show you one last depiction and we're going to wrap up. Boom! Alright, so what we see here, page 77, picture taken by me, African Origin of Civilization. Alright, try and read along if you can. According to Amélineau, this black race, the Anu, probably created in prehistoric times all the elements of Egyptian civilization which persist without significant change throughout its long existence. These blacks were probably the first to practice agriculture, to irrigate the valley of the Nile, build dams, invent sciences, arts, writing, the calendar, as well as the calendar. They created the cosmogony contained in the Book of the Dead, texts that which leave no doubt about the Negro-ness of the race that conceived the ideas. Now I'm going to finish off with most of this part right here. These Anu were an agricultural people, raising cattle on a large scale along the Nile, shutting themselves up in walled cities for defensive purposes. To this people, we can attribute, without fear of error, the most ancient Egyptian books, the Book of the Dead and the text of the pyramids. Consequently, all the myths or religious teachings, I would add almost all the philosophical systems then known and still called Egyptian. They evidently knew the crafts necessary for any civilization and were familiar with the tools those trades required. I think we can stop there. Alright, so what we've gathered here is the original inhabitants of the Nile Valley coming from up south, the land of Ta-Neter, land of the gods, went by the name Anu. So to conclude things, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a visual learner. I want to bring you guys one of my favorite depictions of this Anu. Now, what you're looking at here is a proto-historical figure of the man that you would see walking around in the land up south. This is Lord Terra-Neter of the Negro Anu race, first inhabitants of Egypt. I want to do justice. I don't do these things for no reason. You're going to have to give me a moment here. Boom. So as you can see, the introduction and the walking of the staffs is nothing new. This whole concept of shepherd, this whole concept of people walking around wielding and holding staffs and brandishing them very proudly is nothing new in African culture. On that note, I believe without reasonable doubt, I've identified what the Nile Valley is, where the sources of water come from, where they go, as well as who were the original inhabitants of Kemet, the land of Ta-Neter, land of the gods. Proto-historical figure of Lord Terra-Neter himself, of the Anu race. And on that note, I think we've taken care of that. You can go right on to the initial statements made by National Geographic in regards to Mesopotamia being the dawn of civilization 4000 BC, and we'll dive right in. We'll have some fun with it. Let's go.